Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Siddharth, and I'm from the product marketing team of Manage Engine's ID Security Solutions, and I will be your presenter for today's webinar. I'm also joined today by my colleague Abhishek, who's a product expert, and he has agreed to help answer your queries on the live chat. But before we get started, I just want to make sure that you have no issues with my audio and also with viewing my shared screen. That is my presentation. So if you have any difficulties with either the audio or viewing my presentation, please let us know on the live chat and we'll try to fix it. So I'll just pause for maybe 30 seconds to a minute and just ensure that all of you have no issues with the audio or with viewing my presentation. Right, so I guess everything is all good and we can get started with today's webinar. So once again, I just want to thank all of you for taking time off your busy schedules for joining us today. And what we'll be talking about in today's webinar is we'll be looking at the importance of log management and how SIEM can give you a huge boost to your network security. So our agenda will sort of give a quick look at log management and what SIEM actually is, and how auditing can help you secure your network. So we'll also have what we're going to call the log management best practices for SIEM, which is essentially the entire process of log management. And at each point, I want to sort of give you important points to consider while not only evaluating a SIEM tool, but also while deploying and using it, right? So the entire process, right, from your collection of log data to your analyzing and the archival, we're going to look at some important points to remember and important ideas to understand, which will help you evaluate a SIEM tool better, and also once you purchase one, to use and extract more value out of it. So like I said earlier, we'll also be taking questions for today's webinar, and you may ask these questions as and when you like during a particular topic on the live chat, and we'll try to answer them right away. Or you may ask them at the end of the webinar, and we can have a session, a Q&A session at the end of it as well. So before we actually start and look into concepts of log management and auditing and SIEM, let us first, I always like to start my presentations with a slide like this so that you can understand your security posture better and sort of take stock of the defenses that you currently have in your enterprise, right? Because I strongly believe that the first step to securing your network is to understand what you currently have and what are the things that is lacking or could require another push from your side. So there are a few questions that I want you to honestly answer. You can share the answers with us on the live chat so we can have an engagement over there as well. And maybe I can even share some of your answers in the presentation so that everyone can benefit out of it. So the first thing is, are you aware of the latest trends in cyber attacks, right? Because we keep hearing about new evolving threats on a daily basis, and we keep reading about this in all tech websites and security forums. So it's important as a security professional to do this basic amount of reading so that you know what are the latest threats and trends in cyber attacks. So I think most of you all are from the US region today. So I'm sure all of you have heard about the Equifax data breach, which shook $1 billion company really, which led to the compromise of about, I think, 143 million user accounts. So that was a really horrifying incident that is still going on. And I'm sure a lot of you, after hearing an incident such as Equifax, you might be thinking, is this time for me as a security professional to reevaluate and reassess my security strategy? So the next 2 points are, do you have trained security professionals in your team? And do you have the right set of security tools in your security operations center? Of course, depending on the size of your organization, you might not have a full-fledged security operations center like a big bank. But my point is, do you have the right set of security tools in your for your security team? And these 2 points are sort of related, right? Because in today's security landscape, as a security professional, you do have access to a lot of automated security tools. You have access to a lot of tools. So you've got log management tools which are automated. You've got threat intelligence tools which are automated. You've got a lot of automated tools, but to really extract full value out of it, you need to know exactly how to use them. And your knowledge about cyber attacks and mitigation strategy is going to play a huge role in how you configure these security tools to really get full value out of them. So these are 2 points to think about. And then you got to think about if you've got an efficient process to handle a security incident, right? Because in case you get a security incident, you encounter a security incident in your enterprise, do you have a clear-cut, accountable process to go about resolving the incident, right? We'll be visiting all of this on the course of today's webinar, but I just wanted you to keep all this in the back of your head so that as and when we talk about a particular topic, you're immediately able to relate to it, right? So finally, we come to the final point, which is, do you believe your critical resources now are truly secure, right? What this means is that, are you in a position where you can tell me with 100% certainty that, hey, at this very moment, my network is 100% secure and all the traffic in it is from trusted sources, right? Because today, networks are so complex and so diverse across enterprises that it's become so big, and it's almost a big mess really, that you don't know what is happening in your own network. And that's quite horrifying, because you've set up this whole entire ID infrastructure for your organization, and you need to be in a position where you have complete control over exactly what is going on. So these are some of the ideas we're going to visit on course of today's webinar, and sort of discuss how an auditing tool like a SIEM solution can help you give a huge boost to your enterprise's security. Right, so this brings me to my next slide, which is on preventive security solutions alone aren't going to be enough, right? Because you may have all the cutting edge preventive security solutions, like you might, obviously you're going to have firewalls and IDS, IPS and things like that in place. But despite that, attacks and breaches are still happening, right? If it were true that just having endpoint security solutions and network and host IDS, IPS systems were enough, you wouldn't ever hear about any data breach or any cyber attack, right? Because every company really has these basic defenses in place. But today's security scenario is such that it is almost impossible at this moment to prevent every single attack, especially if you're just going to rely on your preventive security solutions. And here is where a SIEM solution or an SIEM solution comes in to sort of act as a master solution and control or be on top of all your other network security solutions that you have in place. So let's get started and see what SIEM actually is, because this is a term that I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. People say SIEM or SIM, or you hear a lot of different jargon in the industry. You hear log management tool, log auditing tool, SIEM, SIM. You hear a lot of terms, but rather than being concerned about a textbook definition for SIEM, let us be concerned about what it can do for us, right? Let us not look at a definition for SIM, but let us look at what a SIEM solution can do for your security. So that, my definition would be that a SIEM tool can answer vital security questions for your team, right? Questions like what you see on the screen. Who is accessing and modifying your critical files and folders? Which user accounts have been locked out and why have they been locked out? Is there any suspicious activity on my firewall right now? Were any critical changes made to my domain controller or network devices? Any question really. You need answers to such security questions, and often you may need the answer in real time, right? These questions, the few that you see on the screen, and any other question really, maybe you're concerned about the errors occurring on your web server, maybe you're concerned about some modifications on your databases. Answers to such critical questions are of course a major concern for you, and in most cases you might need these answers right away in near real time. So this is what a SIEM tool can do for you, right? You don't need to think of it too much and break your head about terminologies like log management solution or SIEM solution, because to be fair, there's often a fine line between all these kinds of tools, and they sort of give you the same kind of functionality at the end. So I've told you that a SIEM tool can help you answer all of these questions, but how does it actually do that, right? Where do the answers to these critical security questions actually lie? And the answer to that, of course, is that they lie in the log data. And with that in mind, you can say that log management and SIEM sort of go hand in hand, meaning in order to monitor security information and events across your network, you need to understand your log data. And as any administrator, you guys know how powerful your log data is, and you want to get deep insights and meaningful information out of your log data that is being generated in your organization. And these insights go beyond just helping you for just troubleshooting or something like that. But these insights from your log data is going to help you tighten your security, because logs are incredibly powerful and contain all the information that you need to understand what is going on in your network. Because as you know, every single event that occurs in your network gets logged, and if you're able to process and understand this information, you're obviously going to be in a much better position to understand what is going on in your network and detect anomalies and threats and the whole thing really. So continuous monitoring of your logs is the key to security. But of course, as you know, log data can be massive even for a small enterprise, and even a single device could generate thousands of logs per day. And if you look at your firewalls and your IDS IPS systems, you're probably going to have things like 5,000 events per second or 10,000 events per second, meaning even in a mid-sized organization, you may be looking at terabyte amounts of log data. Now again, remember, those are still numbers of small and medium-sized organizations. So obviously in bigger organizations, log management can become even more of a Herculean task for administrators. So here is where you need an automated log management tool or a SIEM tool, and that's where it comes into the picture. So we've got at Manage Engine, we've got a comprehensive SIEM tool called Log360, which is actually came about as an integration of two of our existing tools, one called Event Log Analyzer and the other called AD Audit Plus. So we combined the functionality of these two existing tools to form one comprehensive one-stop solution for log management and SIEM, which is Log360. So over the course of the next few slides where we discuss the log management best practices and key ideas about evaluating and deploying a SIEM tool, I will also try to show you here and there our tool and how it can, how it satisfies the must-haves in a SIEM solution. Right. So here are the log management best practices for SIEM. Right. So we're going to deal with important ideas dealing with these 7 headings that you see right here. We've got, this is essentially the process of SIEM, right? So you've got to collect log data, you want to analyze and get some audit reports out of it, you want to archive the log data, you're going to try to correlate events, be alerted in real time, ensure that you have a streamlined process to respond to incidents, and also in case you get breached, you want to have a clear forensic investigation system in place. So we're going to be looking at these 7 heads, which are essentially the entire process of log management and SIEM. And we're going to look at key um, best practices and ideas that's going to help you deploy a SIM tool. So let's get started. The first question, log collection. And this is something that a lot of people ask me. They say, okay, you're saying a SIM is important. I'm going to deploy a SIM, but what are my log sources? What are the logs that I put inside the SIM solution? So there's no clear-cut answer really because it depends on your requirements and the size of your organization and your budget constraints and so on. But broadly speaking, I think the only rule, or as a rule of thumb, you can say audit sources that concern you, right? You don't need to audit every single device that is there in your organization because that's not practical. You need to audit resources that are really critical and that concern you. So typically, these could be what you see on the slide right here. These could be your workstations, your servers, maybe your Windows servers or your Unix servers, whatever, any important server. It could be your domain controllers. It could be your network devices like your firewalls, routers, and switches, your IDS, IPS systems, your endpoint security solutions, your business critical applications like databases and web servers. Right. So these are the things that you typically want to audit, and these are the things that are most commonly what security administrators look to collect logs from. But it's not as simple as that because before you actually collect the logs, you need to tell that particular log source what are the events it needs to audit. Before you actually go ahead and collect the logs from these different sources, you need to tell that particular log source for what events it needs to generate log entries for. Because remember, it's not that you just add a particular domain controller and instantly you get all the data that you need. How you need to first tell the domain controller that it needs to log events that concern whichever concerns you. So on Windows, of course, you've got what is known as the local policy or group policy, and you can go and configure this on your Windows server. You can configure this granularly so that you are auditing only the events that concern you, right? You don't want to end up with millions of logs, which is only going to create more trouble for your SIM solution, but rather you want to give your SIM solution the right set of logs from these different log sources so that it can do its thing better. And this means you need to enable an optimal audit policy across your different log sources so that they are generating, so that they are tracking only the events that concern you. So for example, maybe I can just show you on your Windows devices. I'm just going to show you the local policy. Right, so I've just opened my local policy editor. and I'm just going to navigate to the security settings. Right, so you see the audit policy right here. And by default, remember that the auditing isn't turned on. And I can go and enable auditing for any of these events. So if I want to track, say, policy changes, I can go to properties and enable auditing for the success and failures of these events. But however, if you just look at enabling your audit policy, you're going to enable every single you're going to generate logs for every single event related to policy changes. Whereas if you use the advanced audit policy configurations right here, you will be able to go and set a granular level auditing for each of these 9 heads that you see. So maybe under object access, I've got so many subcategories right here which I can configure. So this is what I meant when I said you need to configure an optimal audit policy. You need to go to your log sources, whatever it is, maybe your domain controller, and then enable auditing exactly only for the categories of events that concern you and not every single event possible. So this is an important point that I wanted to convey, and this is really important to get right because this is the first step to log management and SIEM. The first step is log collection, which means you need to ensure that the right logs from the right log sources that concern you are being fed to the SIEM solution. So this is the first point that I wanted to tell you about. And with regards to evaluating a SIM tool, you need to ensure that the tool provides both agent-based and agentless mechanisms to collect the log data so that you can ensure that any requirement that you have, maybe you have some servers in DMZs, in which case you need an agent mechanism, or in some cases you might prefer an agentless mechanism. So a tool like Log360 gives you that flexibility so that you can choose exactly how you want to collect the logs depending on your unique requirements. So let's move to the second point, which is on effective log analysis and auditing. So now at this point, you have collected logs from your different log sources, but now that you have them, the question is what exactly can we do with them? Because we spoke about the logs contain valuable information and you want to extract value out of these logs. We keep saying that logs are very powerful, logs are the key to security, and it's the key to understand what is going on in your network. But here is where a SIM tool's reporting and analysis console comes in, so you can parse the collected log messages and have it neatly put down as a report, preferably in an intuitive graphical format, in order to make your life easier. In this way, you get meaningful information. That is, you can visualize the security information, and by simply looking at the report, at first glance, you have the information that you are looking for, right? Because, and further, reporting is really a huge blessing for administrators when it comes to your compliance audits as well. Because you might be complying with a regulation like PCI or FISMA or SOX or HIPAA. And with the reporting console of your SIM tool, you can easily run reports so that you can furnish these reports to your compliance auditors and achieve these different compliance mandates. This way, you're staying on top of all your audits, whether it's internal or external, because every event that is important gets recorded in the log message, and you have collected that log message. So your SIM tool is going to help you easily run a report that you can show to your auditors to say that you know exactly what is going on in your network. So let us look at a simple example. So I just wanted to show an example of web servers, right? Because I mean, I could have shown pretty much any example about any log source, but I just thought we look at a web server report because even the Equifax breach actually had an attack on a web server. So I just thought we'll stay in theme And let's talk about a bit for web server auditing. So what you see on the screen is a report for the top errors occurring on an IaaS web server. So what we had done to simulate this report was we enabled auditing on the web server, on our IaaS web server, and we collected the logs using our SIEM tool. And this report gets populated automatically, meaning you don't need to go and configure or run this report specially. As soon as our tool collects the logs, we've got a bunch of predefined reports. So once we collect the logs, these reports start to get generated automatically. So all you need to do is go to the report that you're looking for, and most likely the reports that you're looking for are available out of the box, meaning you don't need to do anything extra to configure or run this report. So you can see on the left pane of the screenshot, you've got a whole categories of reports set for the top users, the methods, the pages, and so much more to really understand what is going on in your web server very clearly. So things like web servers or databases are business critical applications, meaning that they're vital, of course, to keep your enterprise up and running. And as an administrator, you might be concerned about your web server and not only want to ensure that your web server usage is proper, but also ensure that it is secure from attacks. So with these reports, you can get full control over your web server and any other application or log source really. This makes your life for auditing a whole lot easier because you get predefined reports that give you clear-cut information that you can actually use to tighten your network security. And again, another added bonus is that of the reporting console is that you can easily furnish compliance reports to your auditors. Because each of these compliance mandates would expect you to audit a bunch of things, like maybe a particular compliance mandate requires you to audit the files accessed, the user logons, and track other things like this. So with the reporting console, there is a whole bunch of things that you can analyze and get and visualize this security information at a single glance in one report, in one single console rather. So this is comprehensive reporting and auditing, which is the second log management best practice for SIEM. So look for a solution that gives you the reports that you need out of the box so that it makes your life a whole lot easier. So now coming to the third point, which is on log archival. Log archiving essentially means that your SIEM solution ought to archive the logs collected. That is, whatever is processed at the server has to be archived in a secure location. And this storing of the logs in the in the safe location is so that in the future, in case you need to look at something again, you'll be able to just reload the data back to your SIEM tool and analyze it again. So this archival is important for three reasons. The first is for reducing the hard disk space of your server. The second is for ensuring that you are meeting your compliance mandates because most compliance mandates will require you to archive the log data for a certain period of time, maybe 6 months or 1 year, depending on what your requirement is. And thirdly, for performing a forensic analysis and understanding what happened during a security incident. So this forensic analysis will come back in the end, but in this slide, we just stick to talking about more on log archival. Because now just archiving isn't going to be enough because you want to ensure that your archived log files are secure and not tampered with. Because often hackers try to mess with the log files so that in case you discover a particular breach, you're not able to track exactly what happened because the log files have been tampered with. And in fact, some of them even try to shut down the logging service altogether. But with a SIEM tool, you'll be able to detect that the logs aren't being collected anymore, which could well raise a red flag that something suspicious is going on. But coming back to log archival, you want to ensure that your archived log files are truly secure and that no one is tampering with them. This can be achieved through encryption of the files, hashing mechanisms, and of course timestamping. And this ensures that log data in your archives are tamper-proof, and this is exactly what R2 Log 360 does for you. So with the encryption of the archive files, you can be rest assured that the archive log data is secure for any compliance or internal audit, as well as for forensic analysis if needed in the future. So, like I said, all you need to do is you need to simply reload the archived files back to your SIEM database, and then you can just perform the same operations on them as you were able to do before. But the real value add, apart from just staying compliant, is that, which of course is really important, the real value add though is that in case you have a security incident and you want to perform a forensic analysis to get a clear picture of what happened during a particular attack, all you need to do is, again, just reload the archive log data back into the database and analyze them. Because this gives you a complete audit trail of every single important event that is occurring in your network. So you really have a whole historic collection in your log archives, which is essentially a library of everything important that is happening in your network. So this was the third point on log archival. And coming to the fourth point, which is the correlation of events, right? So correlating events essentially means trying to associate different events happening across your network and sort of building a relationship between the events. So that is, the SIEM tool is essentially going to try to associate or link different events occurring in your network and try to detect attacks based on the pattern. Because many of the individual events by themselves might not be a cause of concern. For example, you might have just a failed logon, which could be a routine event, or you might have some firewall configuration change, which could also be a routine event. But sometimes when some of these events happen together one after the other, it could well be a massive red flag that could require your immediate attention. So given the massive size of the logs you deal with, you're obviously going to have several seemingly abnormal individual events on a daily basis, which are probably not a security concern. So as a security team, you can't waste several precious hours in a day looking at every single event and trying to manually build some relationship amongst these events. Here is where the correlation engine of your SIEM tool helps you instantly identify anomalous behavior which concerns your network security. And in this way, your SIEM tool can analyze a suspicious chain of events that occur one after the other and detect the attack pattern at an early stage. So this means by detecting the attack pattern at an early stage, you can proactively deal with security threats. So you need a powerful correlation engine in order to quickly and efficiently respond to incidents and ignore the events which are false positives. So let us look at a simple use case to illustrate the idea of event correlation and sort of give you a simple example on how it could work. So this, what you see in this slide below, is how typically a password attack would occur. The attacker tries to create a backdoor account in order to carry out the attack. So if you look at the chain of events, you've got a bunch of logon failures followed by a logon success followed by the creation of a privileged user account. So here, if you have just a logon failure in your network, it probably isn't going to be a concern for you. If you have just a logon success, again, you really don't think much about it. But if you have several failed logons followed by a logon success, It could mean that someone has guessed a password. Someone has tried to access a particular system and has failed repeatedly, but eventually manages to guess a password like a brute force attack, and after that carries out an important configuration change or maybe has a privileged user account creation. So this chain of events of logon failures followed by a logon success followed by an escalation of privileges could mean that there is an attack underway right now in your network, and the correlation engine of your SIEM tool can instantly detect that this particular attack pattern or this particular sequence of events is happening in your network right now. Because individually, these events might not seem to be a security concern. But with the intelligence provided by the correlation engine, you can instantly detect suspicious activity like this, which is the basis for efficient threat mitigation. And here I just want to point out that integration with threat intelligence feeds is another must-have feature that comes into play here. Because if you're able to correlate the traffic in your network with a threat feed, you can detect that some IP address in your network is from a known malicious source, and you can quickly take steps to block it. So in short, correlation can detect or capture the entire flow or pattern of the attack in real time as it happens, and your SIEM tool can help you detect this. And that brings me to my next slide, which is real-time alerts. We spoke about some correlation rules, yes, but the end goal that you are looking for is that you want to be alerted in real time that, hey, this particular security event happened right now in your network. And once you get the alert, you can look into what happened and take the necessary steps to handle the security incident. Correlation by itself, of course, isn't of much use unless you are going to be alerted for security events of interest. This is the fundamental purpose of what we are trying to achieve with log management and SIEM. Yes, real-time alerts. Alerting is the most important preemptive mechanism for dealing with security threats. So think about how far this can go in securing your network, right? Because when you are instantly detected, when you're able to instantly detect events through correlation and then be alerted upon a suspicious chain of events, you can think about how much this can help with incident response. So I'm just going to show you quickly how I can configure an alert profile using our tool. So this is our tool, Log360, like I told you, has two modules. One is Event Log Analyzer that you see on the screen right now, and also AD Audit Plus, which does real-time Active Directory auditing. So if I want to configure an alert, all I need to do is select, let me just log in once again, the session has expired. So if I want to set up an alert, all I need to do is choose the device for which I want the alert to be triggered for, and also choose the condition for the alert, right? So I'm just going to add a new alert profile. So configuring an alert in our tool essentially means you just have to give a name for the alert, choose the device or device groups for which you want the alert to be applied to, and we provide a bunch of predefined alerts to make your life a whole lot easier. So if you look at alert categories, like we've got, maybe let me take network devices, let me take firewall traffic, and let me get an alert maybe for the firewall allowing traffic, or more realistically, let me look at maybe say something like router traffic errors. Maybe I want to track DHCP snooping, something like that. So we provide out of the box predefined alerts for most commonly required alerts that admins would want. We also provide predefined alert profiles for compliance mandates like FISMA, PCI, SOX, HIPAA, and all these that you see right here. And we also allow you to create custom alerts depending on your specific requirements. Maybe you want a particular set of event IDs on your Windows servers, you're tracking that and you want to be alerted for that, you can do that easily with our tool. But one very important point that I want to reiterate over here is that setting up the alert profile becomes vital, right? Because you can see we've got this option here called the advanced configuration, where you can set a threshold and a time range for the alert to be triggered. Because if you were to say set an alert profile for just a failed logon, you might be hit with 1,000 emails in one day saying that an alert has been triggered. That makes no sense, because if you get 1,000 alerts during a day, that just defeats the entire purpose of your SIEM deployment. It is of paramount importance that you get alerts only for the events that you want, right? You need to ensure that the alert noise is at a minimum so that every time you get an alert, it's an actual legitimate one. So here you can tweak the alert profile by setting a threshold, which means that you can say if 100 fail logons occur within 1 minute, a condition like that, you can be alerted specifically only for that particular condition as opposed to every single fail logon that happens in your network. You can also, with our tool, set a time range, which means that you can choose, say, something like your working hours or business hours and be alerted maybe for a file access during the non-working hours, which could mean suspicious activity. And once you set up the criteria for the alert, you need to choose how you want to be notified. Maybe you want an email or SMS, or you can go one step further and run a custom script to curb the attack, right? You can set up a custom script so that when the alert criteria is met, this program will get triggered and you can proactively mitigate the attack. So like I said, the configuring of the alert and setting up of the alert criteria is important, and it is a must to get this right. And you know your organization's IT infrastructure better than anyone else. So you need to customize the alert criteria. You can work with our technical consultants and set up the alert criteria exactly for the set of events that concern you, so that you are alerted only for the events that are important. Alerting is the basis of ensuring that your incident response is as low as it can be. So remember this while evaluating a SIM tool and deploying a SIM tool also, so that you know exactly how you can extract maximum value out of the alerting feature. So that's what we've covered in this slide. My next slide is going to be on streamlining your incident response. Because like I said, you've got an alert, you've detected an incident and your SIM tool has given you an alert. But what do you do after that? You need to ensure that you have an efficient incident management process in your security operations, so that you have an accountable process where you know who is handling a particular incident, so that you can track the entire resolution process. And the best way for any administrator is to raise a ticket, right? So if an alert gets triggered, it should go as a ticket to a particular administrator, so that you have accountability in the incident resolution process. And that administrator can then go ahead and analyze the event and take the right steps to respond. And they can refer to an existing knowledge database that your enterprise has built, so that they have access to quick information that they can use to lessen the response time. And then once they have responded to the incident, they can easily report that particular security incident and file it for any auditing purpose, right? So you get an incident, your security incident, and your SIM tool detects and alerts you for that. and then you raise a ticket for a particular administrator so that that administrator can then analyze and respond to that event, maybe referring to an existing knowledge base that your company maintains, and then finally report this particular incident so that you have this audit information ready for any internal or compliance audit. But what if I told you we could do one step further with our tool? I said you can raise a ticket to your administrator, but with our tool, you can go one step further with the alert configuration and automate this process, right? So as an alert gets triggered on a particular set of devices, you can configure a rule so that any alert on that particular device group will be assigned to a particular administrator. And that will be done in real time, and it's automated, so you don't need to manually do a ticket generation. So what we can do is we've got under our alert configurations, we've got this option called assign rules. So I can add a rule, simply give a name for the rule, choose a particular device group, maybe the Windows group in this case, and then assign it to a particular administrator. Right? So this means that anytime an alert gets triggered on this particular device group, it will automatically be raised as a ticket to the designated administrator. This quickens the response process and reduces the response time in your organization. Reduces the time it needed to respond to the incident greatly. And we also do one more thing with our tool, which is we let you integrate our tool with either Manage Engine Service Desk Plus or with ServiceNow, because if you're using a centralized help desk software, you can have your SIEM alerts assigned as tickets on your central ticketing tool. So we can do that as well with our tool. So this can make a huge difference and go a really long way in reducing the time it takes for you to respond to incidents and also creating a neat streamlined process in your security operations center. This again, the accountability is something that you can show to your auditors that you have a process in place where each time a security incident occurs, you are able to quickly respond and track the resolution process. That is, who is responsible for resolving this particular incident. So this brings me to my final slide, which is on forensic analysis. Now, at the start of the webinar, I mentioned that not all security attacks can be prevented, and despite having the state-of-the-art network security systems and practices in place, security attacks still happen. Now, yes, we can minimize the chances of this happening with threat intelligence and SIM solution and real-time alerts and things like that. But you want to be empowered to investigate security incidents and try to limit or ensure damage control in case you do encounter a security attack. So here is where a SIM tool's log search engine empowers you to conduct a forensic analysis in case you do get breached. Because you know you have all the logs collected in your solution, so you have information, the information sits there about every security event occurring in your network, and the feature of log search enables you to drill down from the millions of collected events in your database to just a few that concern you in a given scenario. So if you get your web server, if you have your web server attacked, you can go through the log data from your IDS IP systems in your web server during the time of the attack to really understand exactly what happened and get a complete picture of the attack. This way, you will be able to search through the log data, pull out the logs that concern you for that particular event, and furnish a neat report for your compliance auditors. Because remember, a compliance auditor isn't going to fine you just because you got attacked. They fine you because of negligence. If they find that you didn't have enough security systems in place and that you are negligent to data security, then they're going to impose a hefty fine that can really cripple even the largest of enterprises. Whereas with a SIM tool, you are empowered to minimize the damage by saying that yes, you got breached, but you know exactly what happened, at what time, who accessed which IP address, accessed which web server, which firewall, maybe try to block the web server access and things like that. So you can track every single important event that occurred during a particular attack and show this as a report, as a detailed incident report to your auditors, whether it's internal or your compliance audits. So this is where we are finishing up with the presentation. But before we conclude and engage on the live chat, let me show you one thing that a lot of you might miss out, because we talked a lot about threat mitigation, a lot about stopping attacks. We talked about SIEM, log management best practices. But one thing that gets overlooked often is the internal threat, right? Because most of your organizations will be relying on Active Directory as the core of your IT infrastructure. But do you have a system in place where you are able to track every single critical change occurring on your domain controller? Do you have a system in place where every single important access in Active Directory is being tracked? Because if you don't, you are exposing your enterprise to an insider attack, which are just as deadly as external ones. So we've got, as part of Log 360, we've also got the AD Audit Plus component, which gives you in-depth reporting and alerting in real time for critical Active Directory changes. So with AD Audit Plus, you can audit literally everything of concern in your Active Directory, administrative actions. You can do your privileged user monitoring. You can track log on, log off activity. You can track important changes being made to your DC and GPO, and you can be alerted in real time for any important event that could pose a threat to security. So this is how Log 360 is a comprehensive SIM, because not only are you staying on top of the events occurring in your network and your critical applications like databases and web servers, but you also have a provision for real-time auditing and alerting for Active Directory. So for example, if you want to just something very simple that I'm sure all of you will relate to instantly, if you want to track Active Directory log on, log off activity, it is so simple. I can show you in 2 clicks. So here you can see the account logon information. I've got a bunch of logon success events and a few logon failure events as well. Now I can just click on logon failures and instantly I have all the user accounts that have these logon failures, and I also can find out the reason for the account failures, such as bad password, bad username, and so on. So all this information is available to me at my fingertips in just a matter of a couple of clicks. And you can get alerts for important changes occurring on your Active Directory as well. So this is what Log 360 can do for you. And this is why I would recommend that as a good option for log management and SIM, because we ensure that you can audit every single resource that concerns you, including your Active Directory infrastructure. And this brings me really to the mandatory final slide, thanking you. I'm just having a bit of a glitch with my slide deck, so just a moment. Right, so I'm just navigating to the final slide. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope this session was useful in giving you important tips to keep in mind while evaluating a SIM tool, and also important points that you can keep in mind while implementing and deploying a SIEM tool. So please do leave your feedback at the end of the webinar so that we know if you liked it and what else you'd like to see in future webinars. And at the moment, we are available on the live chat to answer any questions you had about today's webinar or about our product Log 360 as well. So once again, thank you so much for taking time off from your busy schedules and for joining us today. And I hope you have a great day ahead.